Is that
Hi
light in the back all
everyone.
right?
Huh?
Is that light in the back all right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good.
Hi everyone. My name is Tej Yale. I'm the founder and CEO of ThinkImpact. We're a marketing company based out of Rochester Hills, Michigan. And today our guest is former outfielder for the Detroit Tigers, Mr. Andy Dirks. Andy, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
So if it's okay with you, the format that I have is I'll ask you a couple of questions. And for those who are tuning in, if I might open it up for questions and we can go from there. Does that seem okay with you?
Awesome. Sounds great, man.
Sounds great. So, a couple of questions. The first question that I had was, what were some of the lessons that you had learned from switching from being in the MLB to switching to entrepreneurship, and some of the lessons that you had to learn in between the transition?
Yeah, for me, there was a big learning curve as far as, I went from baseball to getting my real estate license, getting with a brokerage, and selling residential real estate to begin with, not having any understanding of quote unquote the real world, right? Because in baseball, you're working every day and you're playing baseball and you're in kind of a bubble per se, to where your travel is taken care of, your meals are taken care of especially at the big league level, your laundry, you don't have a lot of the outside stresses, so you can really focus on the game, the task, and I didn't have a family at that time. So when baseball was over and I got into real estate, the first thing was my schedule and entrepreneurship. My schedule is no longer run by the Detroit Tigers, right? There's not a time I have to be at the field. There wasn't a time that's dedicated for workout. It wasn't like very structured. So kind of going from that employee mindset to more of an entrepreneurial mindset, which is today when I can do what I want. There's nothing tying me down, right? But luckily through baseball, you kind of learn as you go up in levels, you are in control of your career. You can say coach is this and Tiger's this and all this, but at the end of the day, you really are ultimately in control of what you're doing on a daily basis and routines. So every day, my hitting routine was the same. Before I'd get on the field, every single day, I had a routine that I would follow. So then I implement that routine to the best of my knowledge and as I'm learning and growing in this, when I first began, I'm saying, okay, if I start at 9, this is what I can do from 9 to 10. This is what I can do. And now that I've been in the business world long enough, I'm like, people they've been in business 20 years and don't know these things or aren't applying them. So I think that transition for me was just a matter of getting the knowledge and then taking what I've learned from the sports world, which you're only as good as today's tasks. What you've done in the past is nothing really, because you can always live off of your credibility, which some people do, but your service or your product starts going down. People notice that. So you're only as good as you are today. And I'm very hyper focused on each individual task, which over time breeds success. It just does.
Yeah, sounds great. So, is there one thing that particularly attracted you to the real estate industry? Because I think when most people make the switch from athletic to business, most of it is within, say, the investment space or the VC space. So, is there a couple of factors that drove you specifically to the real estate industry?
Yeah, one of them. So when I was in Kansas, I bought a house in Kansas, and the realtor at that time, I just got over my second back surgery. I was doing physical therapy with a specialist in Kansas City, and obviously after my second one, it's like you might want to start thinking about life after baseball. And the realtor who had sold us the property, she was really great. She did a phenomenal job. Um, I was like, wow, I could see how this process would have been a lot more difficult without her, right? Especially me, I didn't know anything about buying houses. That was actually the first house I'd ever purchased. We hopped apartments and did all that for a long time. And she asked me while we were doing, I think we were at inspections, she's like, so have you ever thought about like what you're going to do after baseball? And I said, briefly, but now I'm starting to think about it more. She said, have you ever thought about real estate? Everybody's thought about real estate. Everybody I think has thought, real estate sales could be a potential, moneymaker for me. If nothing else, maybe a side gig. And I said, let me do this. If you wouldn't mind, can I just follow you for like a week and just kind of see what your days are like, what your schedules are like? And I had a little background in college in construction. I worked for a contractor, and we, framed up houses and put on roofs and concrete work, and I enjoyed that. But with a bad back, you're not going to do that. So I follow her kind of, off and on throughout that week, doing a couple different things. And I'm like, this is interesting. It's not like you're, 9 to 5 where I'm just going to be locked in an office space. And I said, let me give it a shot. And my mentality is, I'm one of those guys, I like to do a lot of a big variety of things. But when I do something, I can't help it. It's just like, I need to know everything about it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's how real estate happened. And then it's just kind of went from there. I was in Kansas. I got my license in Kansas, but we had already planned to move back to Michigan. So I'm like, I'm not going to build a client base in Kansas just to leave it. But that was about it. So for about a 9-month period, I just kind of trained, learned everything I could about real estate sales, learned everything I could about houses and how the whole thing works. Came to Detroit, got my license, and never really thought about anything else, which is now I think about other things, because once you know it, it's a matter of client acquisition at this point. I need clients, because I know how to facilitate the transactions. I know how, to do a great job there. So then it almost gets boring. And that's another struggle that I have in my business, is trying to keep the monotony interesting.
Right. So in addition to working real estate, I also know that you have your own company as well. So you're a mini kind of serial entrepreneur. Get Your Game Right, I believe, is
Yeah.
the name of the company. And so I know a big part of like entrepreneurship is prioritizing. If you have different businesses going on, prioritizing plays a big factor in that. So how are you able to prioritize your time between real estate and doing all the podcasts and all the Facebook Lives, all the hitting lessons and all of that?
Yeah, and it's a challenge, and really to get your game right has been put on hold, because my main primary income is real estate. And so you have to pick and choose. I have a lot of ideas, and I like exploring options and doing different things. And I think that's kind of the heart of an entrepreneur, is you keep trying things and you keep developing. The problem with the Get Your Game Right in particular was the service was kind of the mental aspects of baseball, but it's not very monetizable. So when you're looking at it, everybody wants drills and skills, which take a lot of time and effort, and me physically being in a location. And I already have that with real estate, where, I have to be at physical location to show houses and inspections and all these things. So I looked at it, and what made me successful in baseball wasn't just my physical ability. It was my mental approach to the game. It was how I dealt with failure and all these things. So I'm trying to give that to people. But what I realized is that's a tough thing to swallow. It's hard to really examine yourself personally and see, man, I'm really not operating at a very good capacity here. And I do that in my daily life still, but I still enjoy doing those things. Now I'm at this another stage of life where I have 3 young kids and 1 on the way, which that takes time. And I make that a priority. And then, so basically my life is shaped like this: God, family, main business, right? My main primary business. And then I call them secondary businesses that, maybe 2 hours to 3 hours a week I can pursue. And it could be as much as that. And you can start something, and over time it can build, and you'll see where the demand is as you go. But for me to prioritize time, it means that every minute kind of matters. Yeah. And it can be stressful when you do that. And so I just encourage people, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Set a schedule, set a time frame for your individual tasks. And if you're not hitting them consistently, what are you replacing that time with? And maybe that's more important. So for me, like, time with my family is very important. So that's going to trump my time and Get Your Game Right. Now, my primary business, sometimes my family, and because I love them and need to provide for them, maybe, dinner tonight, daddy's not going to be home because he's showing house, but breakfast tomorrow morning, I'll be there. You see, and that's where it can be very overwhelming and complicated when you have lots of things going, and dealing with that kind of pressure as an entrepreneur is why I think a lot of people, they get very stressed out. Entrepreneurs are known for kind of running themselves ragged, just because, we're everything to everybody. And it can be very consuming mentally, emotionally. And I have dedicated myself to not bring that to my family. I don't want to burden my family with the pressures that I'm facing. Right. And it's hard to do. It really is. Even for like the best of the best of the best, what you would think, everybody deals with it. Managing it is important. And that just takes daily little increments. Don't get so frustrated. It's going to be okay. Like, sales are down for Corona. I can't even show houses, You can either freak out and panic, or you can just keep going.
Yeah, so sounds good. So I have some more questions, but I just want to open it up to anyone that's joined on the call if they have any questions. So anyone that's tuned in online, do you have any questions for Andy?
Andy, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You come from a very unique background where these type of podcasts are done, especially from professional sports and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, in any sport, especially in big leagues like yours, there is a definitive goal. That means every year you want to make the playoff, you want to have the world championship. When you do that, how am I going to sustain that by at least reaching the finals next year and things like that? And how my batting average or pitching, everything is in place. So there is a definitive goal towards what you want to do next after you reach your goal. In business sense, what is your primary goal? To achieve X number of $1 million per year, or is it more of satisfaction, even though you don't make money, especially in times like this? Like you indicated, you can't even show the house and the people can't even come and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those measurable quantities are diminished, but you still want to make sure you're motivated, your team is motivated. How do you manage that? And how can you share your thoughts so people watching this can take some takeaway from this podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate it very much. So basically, you have goals, and I think most people are on the same idea. We should set goals, monetary goals. I think you should set. In real estate, it's usually volume of sales, right? So it'd be like, I want to sell $20 million worth of real estate this year, and that will break down into X amount of dollars. Now, with goals, you keep in mind, you set them at a bar that's would be difficult for you to obtain. But you could do it, right? But with my goals and the way I treat my business and I've treated my life is you have to make adjustments. So same way in baseball. The people who are the quickest and the best at making adjustments have the most success. For instance, in baseball, I'm facing a pitcher and he's throwing me a pitch that I can't hit, and he knows I can't hit it. Now I have two options. One is to surrender that pitch and let him have his way with me and strike me out, or I need to make an adjustment to be able to make contact with that pitch. So when your goals are blown out of the water, like they will be this year, I think for me, when you have a goal of 20 million and you're already 4 months in and you're only at like 3 or 2 or 2.5, 3 because of all this stuff, you say, okay, now what kind of adjustments can I make to my goal to where they're still going to be challenging, but possibly obtainable? So you take 20 million, I say, okay, I got 2 months here and I can't work, so I need to crack that down. And now my goal might be 15 by the end of the year, right? Still a very successful and positive outcome. So when you're chasing, world championships, if your dream is to obtain a goal, you want to be, like Jeff Bezos, you start with smaller dreams and work up from there. Because if you get discouraged, what'll happen is frustration sets in. And with frustration, your thinking process starts slowing down and you start rushing into decisions and rushing into possibly new ventures and new concepts within your business that aren't the most beneficial for your business, right? So your adjustments need to be made with a sound mind, which can only come from thinking clearly, having good discussions with people that have been there before, and obtaining the correct amount of information. So for me, I see holes all over in my business because of this. One of them being not enough online social media marketing and too much physical marketing, because we're a very physical business in real estate. So for me, it's very clear to see I needed to make an adjustment here. But now I want to do the research to make the adjustment efficiently and make it make sense. Don't just, I'm not just going to, this is happening, so I need to throw, $10,000 into my social media really quickly if I don't know how to do it effectively. So I that's the way I approach it, and I don't get frustrated because I know that it's not a big deal, because no matter if it's coronavirus or if it's, a death in the family or whatever you're going to go through, there's going to be an adjustment process. And most people, I have found, the worries, the things we worry about most in life never come to fruition the way we think they will come to fruition. I call it false prophesying about your own life. So with Corona, I could say, oh no, the government won't let me work. That means this year I'm going to lose employees because I can't pay them. And I'm going to possibly lose my business. It's going to affect my retirement. It's going to affect this. Could that be true? Possibly. Is the likelihood that it's going to affect every single one of those aspects true? Very unlikely, right? So instead of falsifying your future and worrying about those things, let's just make our small adjustments. And the end, that goal, that finite goal, that achievable, that thing that you wanted at the end, it's still going to come, right? It just might not be the quantity that you desired, or it might not be exactly what you desired, but it doesn't mean that it's not fulfilling. When you win the American League Championship we didn't win the World Series. I can still look back at that and say, wow, that was a really successful season. It didn't quite get to where we wanted, but as a player and an individual player on a team like that, you say, it could have been way worse. And wow, that was really an honor to even be able to play at that level, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. On a follow-up question, I have on a lighter note, I have a question. When you're in, especially being in real estate, do a lot of your clients ask a lot of stories about the game and things like that, where you have to spend quite a bit of time on that?
It hasn't been. So when I first got in, I wanted to be known as being good in the real estate space. That was my primary goal, because I like to be good at what I'm doing. But it has led to interesting conversations. I actually had a closing where we were at the closing table, and I was working with a buyer, and we're sitting there, and the seller, they knew who I was. They'd recognized me for my name of being in Detroit. The buyer had no clue who I was. They're just not sports people. And the seller said, wow, that's so cool that you played. And I've been with these buyers for 6 months. We were looking at properties and meetings and all those different things, build a nice relationship. And they're like, that's so cool that you used to play for the Tigers. Now you do real estate. My buyers go, you didn't tell us that you played for the Tigers.
Yeah, I can imagine.
but I've also had, you walk in and they have the Tiger stuff, and I'm like, as long as I'm pretty good here on this listing appointment, I think I got it. Like they already have your picture in their house. That's given me some confidence that they'll probably use my service.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Are there any other questions? Okay, I had a couple more, Andy, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of players at the major league level have a hard time sometimes with financial kind of literacy in terms of promoting a certain kind of lifestyle that may reflect because of their salary and all of that. So what would your advice be to athletes to handle that in a much more mature way rather than, getting caught up in promoting those kind of lifestyles.
Yeah, it is.
At the major league level.
It is very tough, and just coming from experience from it, I was fortunate that my parents, I come from the middle of nowhere in Kansas, farm community, laborers, that's what we are. And they didn't know anything about money because they never had much, but they did know this: save, don't spend, right? So they always put that on me. Never invest or anything like that, but just save. So at least when I went to the big leagues, I had enough financial literacy to say, don't spend a lot of money, just put it in the bank and figure out what to do later. And I would advise, if you don't have a clue what you're doing with money and you're in a position where you're making a lot of money, I wouldn't even jump in quick with a financial advisor until you have done enough research to pick a good one. I would save it. Just put it in the bank, focus on what you're doing. Because in baseball, your careers can be very short, athletes, musicians, entertainers, somebody wins the lottery, whatever it is, you get an inheritance. Some people might get an inheritance of $150,000 and they go out and they just want to spend. It's like, I feel free to spend now, but you'll look back and regret that decision. Instead, put it in the bank. Don't touch it until you kind of can wrap your head around lifestyle, because this is where athletes get in trouble. And they're living a lifestyle that, yeah, you can buy $1 million house if you're making $5 million. Completely. Buy $1 million house. What the problem is when the $5 million runs out, that $1 million house still takes $100,000 or $80,000 a year to maintain, and $80,000 a year to keep it functioning. Same way with your cars. Insurance on a BMW is way higher than on a Nissan. Like all these things, and what happens is they had enough money to buy it initially, but to maintain that lifestyle, you'll just go broke in like a couple of years. Like a lot of players, they go broke very quickly. A lot of them have done very charitable things. You give $1 million over here, 500,000 over here, 100,000 over here, and done charitable things, which is great, but their own finances that they kept, they mismanaged. I felt the burden of it just because, you go years without income too. For me, like I went 2 years basically without an income between my last year with the Tigers and my first year in real estate. As I'm doing physical therapy, you don't get paid for that, so when, if you run a business, if there's nothing coming in the top, that makes the numbers on the bottom hard to work out. Right. And I think that athletes run into that a lot too. You get done, you're living a lifestyle where you would probably need $300,000 or $400,000 a year just to manage it, just to maintain it. That's a bad position to be in, going into the private sector of work where, it's not easy to make $100,000 a year if you have skills, alone you have no skills. So I would say save it until you can research enough financial advisors, because there is a financial advisor that knocks on your door as soon as you are even thinking about big leagues. They want to get in and they want to make their commission off your money, which is fine if they manage it well. But most of what I've seen is especially for athletes, because we're notorious for just signing the dotted line and not reading the fine print, or not even having an attorney read the fine print. If you're making that kind of loot, you should have an attorney, you should have a financial guy, you should have like a team of people around you. If you're making anybody that's making $200,000 a year plus, I think 100,000, like have your team of who's your financial person, who's your attorney, because you think, oh, I don't need an attorney. You will want an attorney to do your estate planning and all those things, right? And then have kind of that built around your real estate agent, like have your real estate people who are very knowledgeable in their spheres and who kind of know each other and work together. Like I work with a lot of attorneys, especially for clients. It's amazing. Clients who have money have smart people around them. It's just like inevitable. Like they've built up a nice pocket of wealth. They got, 10 million, 20 million, whatever it is. They all have like their doctor, their this guy for this guy for this girl for this lady for this, and they all work together. It's their accountants. It's amazing. So I've kind of modeled my life now that I'm out and I see these people who are more successful, and I'm like, there's a secret to that. I'm going to do that. So I have my accountant, my attorney, my people who are around me to advise me, right?
Yeah, nice. That's great. And I know you have a pretty good team that you work with at Berkshire Hathaway. And so I was wondering, like during the AL conference series, were there any lessons that you took from the Tigers locker room that you tried to tell your team about to motivate them coming from the sports angle that you feel are applicable within the real estate sector?
Yeah, I do. And I think for anybody managing people or anybody who's over people, leadership is a very tricky thing. Number one, because it is easy to get power hungry, especially if you've never been in a leadership position, or if you have been, and you as you go up, the more power you have to manage it correctly, because you can turn into a very authoritative, like dictator, a my way or the highway type. And employees, people that are under you, you want them to perform well. It does you no good to pay people if they're not performing to their maximum ability. Now your pay might reflect their what they're producing, but I like to encourage people. I want to maximize their ability. So if I'm paying them $20 an hour, that I'm getting really an employee who's worth 40, but they love it and they love their freedom and they can come to me with anything. And I want them to grow, right? And that's a big thing when you take a person and they're trying to achieve something, so you can incentivizing income is a very good strategy to increase production. Say, hey, for contract to close assistant, you'd say like, okay, for every closing that is from contract to close that closes by the dates and on time, you get a $150 bonus, something like that. They're going to be on those files like, yeah, I need this to close, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to do everything they can to manage that. So incentivizing that way is a good idea. Also giving them some power inside your business. Like they can make a decision without you breathing down their neck. This is my thing. I'm a human, so I'm fallible. I've made mistakes. I don't expect my employees to be perfect. Now, when you're a leader, when your employee does make a mistake, it's on you. And this is what's hard for people to let go of in real estate, especially. People don't want a team because they think that they're the only one who's good enough to show the house and to do this. And that's not true at all. If people have enough information, they're more than capable of providing a great service. But letting go of the power sometimes is a struggle. Because I've looked bad to some of my clients based on what my employees have done, but I take full responsibility, you see? Mm-hmm. And then when they feel like they have let down the team or let me down, I don't shame them. I don't, yell at them. It's a good learning experience. And because they have come to want to please me, because they respect me and I'm nice to them and I want what's best for them, that when they mess up, it's like the child you don't have to spank anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like they feel bad. And that's the kind of people that I want to work with on a daily basis. I don't want to work with people that you have to drag along and come on, we can do this. I have to micromanage them. And if you do that, you'll go nuts. So, but it takes a while. You're going to have to hire people and fire people, and firing people is not the funnest thing ever. But you have to be real with yourself too, because you're running a business that I think for every, 2 or 3 people you hire, you find probably 3, you find a good one. And knowing when to cut ties. That is something I had to learn because I always felt like I'm a team guy. So I always felt like I could bring them up. Like, come on, you can, and what ends up happening is it slows you down and it drags the whole business down. And that person might really not even want to be there. They're just doing it because they want some money. They're not really, like a team, but giving the individual power comes with a risk. But I think if you can find the right group, it makes business more fun too. Like the monotonous days, have fun in the office, enjoy each other's company a little bit. We don't do complaining. Complaining to me, I fight it. We all fight it, right? But to me, it is the most unproductive thing a human being can probably do with their time, is to complain about their circumstance, their situation, why it's not fair. We all face them. We all can have a sob story. And I think that it is probably the most unproductive thing a human can do, is to complain, as opposed to, if you have a problem, look at the problem. Let's figure out a solution to the problem so we can move forward. It's so clear, but it's hard to manage on a daily basis. I was just complaining the other day about the weather here in Michigan. I'm like, it's the end of April. I'm still wearing a coat, So it's something we all are fighting. And it's good to have groups, accountability groups, and people who you trust and mentors you trust to be able to reflect on. Because sometimes I need called out. I need somebody, and I give my employees power to call me out. If I'm being a jerk today, let me know. Because sometimes you're doing things and you're just not fully realizing the implications it's having on the people around you. And so I give them freedom to even call me out, which is, you have to humble yourself, because sometimes it's like, I'm paying you, you should deal with me, but you got to humble yourself and realize that, hey, it's what's best for the team. It's what's best for my family. It's what's best for everybody around me, for me to maybe suck up my pride for a little bit and let them come to me if they have an issue with the way that I'm treating them. We've had discussions on payment, because I tell them, and if you can out negotiate me, go for it. Because I think it's a good exercise in your office, especially in a real estate office, to engage in negotiation constantly. They come and they say, hey, I want $22 an hour. I say, well, show me why, because those are fights we have every day when you're in a service business, is for commissions, and fights we have for clients with contract negotiations. So why wouldn't we continue them into our own personal business? It's constantly training that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a fun question, are there any clients that you're working with, like within the Detroit sports arena, or that you help manage, or?
A lot of them rent. So I do some leases. I'll do leases for some of the Tigers guys. They'll get a house in Birmingham or wherever for a short period, month to month. But not many players buy here, because I'm more into the buying and selling. It's just more bang for your buck. Because if you're going around doing leases and you make, for instance, $1,200 a month on a lease, you get $600. By the time you pay some brokerage, some office fees, and all that to it, you might have spent like hours and made $400. So it's not the most time effective, but Inge is in, Brandon Inge, I'm sure if you know the Tigers, you remember him. He's in town. His kids go to not Brother Rice. What's the other big academy there?
International Academy?
No, it's not. Oh man, I need slapped in the face for not remembering. But his kids
go to the country day, or
Country Day. Yep. There you go. So his kids go to school at a Country Day, and he helps out with the baseball team. But I think he has and we had talked about it right before this broke out, but I might sell one of his properties. But most of my client base is pretty traditional. I'm working with people. It's funny because most of my client base is people ages probably 25, 28, kind of that first time home buyer, to about 55, somewhere in there has kind of been my primary range of clientele.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Anywhere from, and house-wise, 150,000 to $1 million. And north of $1 million, there's just not that much real estate. They're really not, even in Oakland County, which, we're one of the richest counties in Michigan for sure. $1 million properties, everybody thinks, oh, I'll just go be $1 million real estate agent. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Let me see. I'll be $1 million real estate agent. Without having the right contacts, you will not be. I mean, you gotta be honest, And even if you're a former Detroit Tiger, it's not like all of a sudden you're uh, the CEO of Shinola wants to buy a house with you.
Yeah. Sounds good. There's one last question that I had for you. I think on Monday night it was reported that Derek Jeter kind of foregoed his personal salary within the MLB because during the COVID crisis. So I was just wondering, from a player standpoint, where you see the future of sports going with all of the clubs obviously experiencing hardships, and then what are your thoughts, or how would you advocate from a player aspect on what Derek Jeter has done within the MLB?
Yeah, sports. The good thing about sports is there's a lot of money. There always has been. People love sports. They're entertaining. They're competitive. People can have their teams. I think the future of sports is secure. Now, how much money are these teams going to end up making? Baseball is one of the declining sports, actually, compared to football. And basketball has done a nice job because of the social media platform, where they allow their content to be shared and distributed without having rights. Where baseball, the MLB, is very tight with their stuff, but it's hurting them in the younger age group. So I think baseball is going to have a decline, because the generation below me, they don't watch baseball. They watch basketball and football. They don't really engage in baseball like basically every generation but mine and above me has. Now with Derek Jeter, like giving your salary up, I think that's awesome. If you can afford to do it, I think it's a good way to acknowledge and give back. I know some guys have cut checks to minor league players because if they're, you don't make much in the minor leagues until you're on the 40 man. But as far as managing what's going to be good and right and wrong, the players union, which I am not a big union man for a lot of reasons. One of them is, when business, you don't like unions. If you're if you're running a business, you're negotiating against labor unions. That doesn't make your life easier. And I don't like unions because there is a point where the labor, the workers, for instance, the baseball players, can kind of get lazy and not produce. So you even see that in baseball, where the contracts were going 12 years, the Miguel Cabrera type contracts. I think that baseball should shift, but the demand is still high. But the players, like, if you sign a 12-year contract, it should be very incentivized towards the end of your contract, how well you're producing. That you can get this much if you're producing, but you don't see that. But because the demand for the players is that high, and there'll be a balance here. So we have yet to see it, because the salaries, and maybe after this season, when the teams lose so much money, the salaries are going to come back into check. But like Justin Verlander, I think, is donating most of his salary to convoy relief. And people say, "Oh, it's no big deal to Justin Verlander's 20 million, $10 million, no big deal to him." I don't care who you are. $1 million is a lot of money. There is no doubt. There's not a person on the planet, I don't care how much money you've made, that would say, "Oh, $1 million isn't generous," right? They say, if it's 1% of their net worth, for instance, I've seen articles like that. Well, it's only 1% of their net worth. Well, when's the last time, if you made $100,000, when's the last time you just gave away 1% of it? Not very many people do,
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you look at it and you say, cool. I think players helping out is essential for the game. It's always been. We've lost connection a little bit too. So it used to be a very connected fan to player, right? You see them out at the restaurant. It's so fun to see them. But they've kind of become so celebritized because they make so much money, I think, that it's almost like they're celebrities instead of athletes. Because most of the guys I ever played with, they're baseball players. They're not, cushy, like Kim Kardashian type. They're athletes. They're baseball players. But it's kind of like you've kind of seen this kind of prima donna mold coming from these athletes. That's like, now they're like into Ferraris and Gucci suits, and like Where like Al Kaline, who unfortunately just passed away, but Al Kaline was like, he wore blue jeans and tennis shoes and, a button-up shirt, like just a normal guy. And he was a very good baseball player, but he kept it real. And I hope that there's still some of that. There's still some of that going on, and for the athletes to kind of keep it real for the kids. I mean, you see the kids, they don't need to see, Ferraris and girls. That's what they see all over media right now. They need to have like something to attach to that's a little more like wholesome and like, okay, he's a hard worker. He's just a normal guy. He was a really good baseball player and he made it to the big leagues. He wasn't nothing special. It wasn't like God just gave him good ability and he maximized it. It's not like he's the baseball players are not these special people. Derek Jeter, he's a human. Justin Verlander, we're human. And I know that because I played with them. And they make mistakes and they do stupid things and they have bad jokes and they, like it goes on and on. So, but it's good to see that people are giving back. The game, though, I think, like anything, the more we get digital, the harder it is to personalize. So there will be a balance at some point of how do we keep things personal in relationship with people and still use it on digital platforms and still have that. Because I think there's going to be an awesome like balance if we can find it to where we use these amazing tools, but we don't lose touch with individual personality and individual care for people and individual relationships.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate your time and appreciate you accommodating our interview request and wish you good luck. You and your team good luck.
Yeah, thank you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and I'm sure we'll be in touch at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Have a good one.
Yep, you too. Take care.